Series 94005, items 1 through you know what. Oh, all right. 39. For those interested in extraordinary human possibilities, the problem with ordinary institutions and all organized attempts thereat is that there is no knowing individual at their core responsible for them. There is a rhythm to life that is damn near hypnotic. With the body, this presents no problem and can, in fact, offer certain pleasantries. But with the mind, now there's where an anxious man finds potential difficulties. Hey, cried out one area of local conditions, I may be dumb, but I sure can dance. And yes, he surely could. And if you're asked, if you keep on poking around at life while still insisting that you're not actually criticizing it, what's this going to eventually accomplish? Dumb though they be, some still enjoy watching themselves trip the verbally fantastic. Definition: civilization. The necessary making of the simple sticky. The true physical origins of man's dreams of a lost paradise was the initial barren plains of nervous system consciousness, upon which was subsequently constructed the verbal Tower of Babel, which the ordinary now blame for man's loss. But note, sweet Elizabeth, without which man could not have such dreams. My good Lord, Holmes, that makes the whole thing work out just right. I know, Watson, ain't that a bitch? The quizmaster said, the question was, is it animal, vegetable, or mineral? And yes, it was all three, because the correct answer was man. And there'll be extra points for any of you who said man and then some. And oh yeah, triple extra points for any of you who are man and then some. Speaking in regard to the intellectual end of man's nervous system, which is the only area pragmatically pertinent to be spoken of, a more consciously alert person is a caboose attempting to run a train. And don't scoff, little Elmo, it can be done. You're just too dense to see it. According to the ancient traditions of the people of this one world, quote, if you act dumb, life will leave you alone. And now, the good news. If you can enjoy being irritated and uneasy, you can enjoy being civilized and ordinary. And now, the bad news. Hey, what could be worse than that? One father told his son, and if you were asked, besides a father and a son, what do you mean when you say a father and a son? And this one father said to his son, just because you understand the nature of human existence doesn't give you the right to feel sorry for people. If consciousness is son to the father of the mind, then so is the reverse. In one certain hard-nosed city that prides itself on being straight and in your face, and whose civic motto is, let's get right to it, they have a saying that goes like this. You're either an artist or you're a turd. And oh yeah, there is always this. If you're of ordinary mind, at least bad news will get your attention. During one local celebration of annual Let's Be Nice to Life Day, the mayor made this admission to a small group of visitors in his office. I guess you could say that those who think the least suffer the least. And one of the guests mused, should I find that particular piece of info encouraging or otherwise? Meanwhile, over at City College, the dean was just announcing a new policy, to wit, that you could now apply to be an athlete or a philosopher, but not both. And meanwhile, over at City Hospital's maternity ward, the chief of obstetrics made note that they had already long observed such a protocol. Definition: human institutions. The elephant of life letting fleas be its spokespersons. Everybody's an expert. One city father's recent notation to his offspring: if you cannot make the worse sound better and the better worse, you do not possess a fully civilized tongue. A certain unruly area in one man's brain one day slipped him this message. You can talk about neurons and thinking all you want to, but them hormones will still push you just about anywhere they want to. Points to ponder. Is it really the proper function of a man's own mind to make him feel uneasy? Physics 202. Magnetism. Its functions and dynamics. How it works, damn it. Men with no talent are attracted to name tags and titles. Semi-annual husbandry 103. Alliterations tend to breed. As regards the attempt to do anything extraordinary with your life, such as to find out what the hell is going on with this thing called being alive, the following is a fact. All organized efforts along these lines are chump, pseudo, and phony efforts. Oh, and this, by the way, is why, at the outset, so many would-be mystics' minds tell them, okay, now the first thing we've got to do is get organized and get a plan. And this, may Meister Elkhart's sister bestow pleasing transcendental favors upon you, operationally serves to keep most from ever going any further than that. Daddy, when I get older, can I become a more conscious person? Yes, son, either that or you can join the Little League. Wow, which costs the least? The unnoted sequence of how the life of man unfolds. A man feels the urge to sing. He then finds either a church, recital hall, or nightclub that'll let him, and subsequently becomes known as having chosen to become that type of singer. With some, being sick of being civilized is part of being civilized. Yes, my boy, we could all learn a lot from life. Well, why the hell would anyone want to learn about anything that they're already being forced to live? Whoa, calm down there, lad. I don't believe you got the real gist of what I was talking about. Oh, I get it. I get it all right. Are you sure? I'm positive. Well, if you're sure. With some, being sick of being civilized is part of being civilized. Routine awareness is like a two-legged bird on a wire, continually hopping from one foot to the other. Whereas a freer form of consciousness would be like the bird forever hovering just above the line. The more alert person's horoscope for the day. The planets are still up there, and you're still down here. What gives are you anyway, cuss breath? Newly discovered legend. One day, in what I suppose was an attempt to do something new, life said to the man-like creatures on this one world, everyone who still doesn't know what they're doing, raise your hands. And every man jack of them raised their little hands, and life thought, well, shit, I didn't expect that. And if you're right, if you do just make up everything you talk about, and if life makes us all up, including you, then what's the big deal? Oh, and now, a newly discovered big deal. Personal hygiene is to hormones as personal hygiene is to neurons. And everybody, alas, is an expert. Local conditions laughed at one man's efforts and told him, hey, I can run in circles just as long as you can. But I say, is not a headache reminding a head that it is calling the shots just the teensiest bit redundant? Letting the mind just run its normal course is not unlike blindly following a trail of breadcrumbs of unknown origins to unspecified destinations. Only the unoriginal will accept the fact that man cannot be original. Life asked one man, would you prefer to be normal, creative, or weird? And local conditions on one world whine, don't you think we've already carried that whole bit far enough? Myth. The only way the puppet can help or harm the puppeteer is by becoming as smart as the puppeteer, which is not reasonably possible. And even if it were, there's no way that the puppet could hurt the string puller. So, my boy, now what's your excuse for still wearing that starter jacket from Plagiarism U? During this brief time out, you might care to consider this other view of certain people's certain non-standard position within the general scheme of things. If you're satisfied, you run the risk of being too satisfied. And if you're dissatisfied, there's always the danger that you'll be so dissatisfied that you won't make any efforts to move therefrom. Daddy, is this why all famous, and might I add, good-looking mystics have 3 legs whereas others only have 2, and yet they still feel cheated? Another sojourn to that feature that your uncle likes to call another ventilator, another view. Murder, to some, is the highest form of civilized entertainment. And someone's second cousin wonders, are we still in the land of allegory? One man told his tongue, which sometimes passed as his son, although words are ultimately unimportant, if you are going to speak, at least be specific. And just like life wanted, behind his back, his tongue continued to laugh at him. Okay, upbeat historical legend. 'Tis rumored that there were a few knights who managed to reverse this situation. Okay, upbeat current events. 'Tis known that there still are. H.I.G. How it goes, how it goes. If you take credit for some aspect of your personality, there's always a danger that they'll turn credit into responsibility. And then there's a further danger that they'll eventually turn responsibility into blame. Definition: morality, an attempted judgment call regarding feeling good. Definition: love, the attempt to make sex stand still. From our free viewer's guide, this tip. What I say is not criticism of life, but rather a telling on it. In the grand totality that is the human experience, it is possible for a man to teach others that which he does not understand and cannot do, with one exception. Q&A time. Question and answer. Question: what is worse than stupidity? Answer. Being a critic of stupidity. Last Thursday at the College of Consciousness, Professor Bentfield told his class, a more alert man's relationship to his mind and routine thinking would be reflective, I suggest, of Dr. Johnson's to the words of his day. Symbolic Logic 101 reconsidered. Zert. All choice is possibility. Noof. There is no such thing as possibility. And now class may or may not be dismissed. Oh, but first, for you gritty-eyed graduate students, a more complex version of an earlier definition. Fame. Yet another attempt to freeze frame sex. If we weren't running late, I'd say think about it. But we don't. A succinct history of man, the great cosmic nervous system. The beginning of the end commenced when the very first man said, hey, where's the beginning of this thing? And when someone else added, yeah, and where's its end? Definition, local conditions. Everyone's drug of choice. Always available and legal in all 50 universes. One fellow, as he studied the cities of man, pondered this question: were the alpha wolves life selected to lead our civilized packs, chosen for their aggressiveness, their intelligence, or their obedient stupidity? He later had to remind himself that such thinking ran dangerously close to the three-layered swamp wherein one is inclined to thrash about, wondering whether human existence might either be the subject of a willful, intelligent conspiracy or of an automatic dumb one. Or if the person engaged in such speculations might himself constitute a whole new category of perceptual density. The matter of hormones/neurons surveyed from a slightly different angle. If sex organs could talk, what the hell would there be left to say? The shore revisited. Thought, a flashlight. Consciousness, a lighthouse. And now presented publicly for the first time, a jungle maxim, fully indigenous and produced by the animals. It rains on hippos and hyenas alike. Yeah. A gamekeeper notes that using this one as an example could account for the paucity of known interspecies aphorisms. An energy-saving tip and fret reducer for you insiders. Life can't be made any better. But the rest of you out there shouldn't let that stop you. One guy told his mind, "Don't call me, I'll call you." And it said, "But I don't have a phone." And he said, "I know." A man with a sweater in the weather may feel better. A man with a brain he can contain for damn sure will. A poem. There was from last time one that went more or less like, well, it was that men don't have thoughts, thoughts have men. Which, that would have probably gone down, but thanks to the complex operation of new intelligence, the show, the movie, the way of life, and the bag of potatoes, did we, speaking in the royal pejorative, let it go at that? Hardly. That was followed not by a pregnant, meaningful period, but by, if I remember correctly, a semicolon. And then it said, "Man doesn't think man's." And it received about the same sort of response. So knowing that you probably lost much sleep and wondered about it, men are constantly, as soon as we talk about the civilized singular world of man, then this is one of the things men are saying continually, tacitly. Just everything, well, 90%, all right, 93% of everything that man says has a tacit kind of disclaimer in the beginning, more or less to the fact that he is having this thought. Now he says things like, "Well, here's what I think," or "Here's my belief," or "Well, my opinion about this," or "My experience," no matter what he's saying. Because even when men say their experience, 93% of the time, it's not something they actually experience, it's just something they read about. It's just a frame that they saw it's just a flash in a movie something they thought about once. What they're saying is, I have thoughts. I mean, what else is the intellectual world? I have thoughts. And they do it on the basis, without analyzing it in this way, but they would agree, if they knew that I wasn't up to some nefarious effort here to catch them with their thoughts down, that they would agree if I said, well, the idea of having thoughts is like this, is it not? It's almost as though the brain, if I get them past them worrying about the brain and the mind and all that it's take your choice, people. It's your brain / mind. It's almost as though it is a screen and it brings up pictures. Is it not? And if they didn't think that I was about to poke it to them, they'd go, yeah, that's reasonable. And they do that on the basis. Do you follow now? It's not, thus far there's nothing amiss, because ordinary people, psychologists, psychiatrists, everyday folks would say, yes, the mind is almost like, if we're going to use similes, it's almost like some sort of screen upon which, when I say I have thoughts, that I'm bringing up, pictures, words and pictures, but I'm bringing up pictures in the full sense of the word. That's a screen, is consciousness, my mind, my brain. For the time being, let them pick out anything they want to, but it's like a screen, and I bring up these pictures. Now what that, non-surprisingly, what that does also, non-verbally, is establish an operational assumption, well, to them it's a reality, but it's an assumption that the screen and the pictures are two different things. Well, as it is in real life, as it is in the tangible, in the physical, non-human world of an actual phosphorus tube on a TV set and what comes over it. Because you can have the set cut off and there's the screen, or you can find the damn picture tube laying out behind a dumpster. And that's not the same thing as seeing Pavarotti try to ice skate. It's not the same. The tube and a TV program is not the same. We're going to a movie theater. That can be the finest theater. It can be one of these great huge screens. And you walk in there before it's open and you sit there and stare at the screen. The screen is not the same thing as once they start the movie, right? I mean, it's just obvious. Men, when they say, verbally or otherwise, that, well, I think this, I'm having this and this thought, or when they're just looking off and thinking, when they're pondering, they treat it on the basis. They would agree that if I said, well, thinking, when you say you have thoughts or just trying to think, it's not the human mind. It's sort of like a screen, and you're continually bringing up pictures. And they would say yes. Like if someone says, well, can you figure out this particular problem? This is your department here, or you give somebody a math problem, or you ask somebody, can you give me directions to so-and-so? And they stop and look off, and you can almost see it. There's like, they would believe that when they say, let me think a minute, what's the name of that place? And you tell them, and they go, geez, I know where that is. And they go, wait. And it's almost, you can see, it's like a screen. It's like they're trying to scan to try to find the information and bring up the ideas on the screen. Like, wait a minute, I'll tell you. Damn, I know. Wait a minute. It all sounds well and good. You understand? There is an operational assumption that is taken as, if I question it directly, people would say, well, that is obviously true. It is demonstratively true. It is reasonably, logically true that my mind and what it thinks are not the same thing. For a few people, this offers a certain area of vicidness. Because when you're dealing with this kind of, which is everyday consciousness, when you're dealing with, what are you dealing with? What can you call it other than fixed attention? That you're just riveted on something. All you've got to do is have some awareness of yourself that the brain, as soon as you wake up in the morning, you kind of, rub the little dust bunnies out of your eyes and kind of, turn off the electric blanket or turn up the heater, do whatever you do and, pull up your clothes. And almost the first thing, you don't even think about it because you don't have to, is your brain wants to go, your mind, and jump somewhere. It is. There's no doubt. Once you see it, it's not a big secret. It's just that nobody has any need to do it. That ordinary thought, ordinary states of awareness, mental awareness, is like just a regular two-legged bird sitting up on a wire, except it's constantly going continually, as long as you're alive. And you wake up in the morning, it was doing it even when you're asleep, which is of no consequence. But as soon as you wake up, it's like, where am I? Quick. It's like the mind has got to suddenly go, oh. And you make up your own or just be aware of it. You go, oh, 9:30 appointment. Ooh, what time is it? Ooh, did I drink too much last night? Ooh, is it too hot? The mind just immediately goes, It is, if you need any evidence, and those of you who have strong minds and stomachs, proof that you are a dunderhead if you're not aware of this. And there's one small step after that, to be aware of the fact that there is no such functional distinction between, at the ordinary level, a man's ordinary condition, there's no distinction between the screen and the photographs. The screen and the pictures coming up on it. The mind and what it apparently thinks. When people say that they have thoughts, when they say, well, I think so-and-so, or I've been thinking on this, just whatever they say, you understand, we're not playing with the words of their description. It is the normal state of consciousness for people. As they say, and they would say if you ask them, yes, I am having thoughts, I am pondering such, I am musing, I am reflecting, I am ruminating. Pardon me. But they say, and it's not just a verbal game now, they say, yes, well, here's what I think. And if we had, at least you think I'm overdoing it, if we had a good, reasonable, educated, civilized psychologist, for instance, here, and I said, can you hear where I'm going? They might say, yeah, but you're about to go too far, because that's a reasonable state. If you're going to say in some way that a man should not feel separate from what he thinks, you're getting into an area that I don't even know a classification, but it's obviously some sort of neurosis. You're outside the bounds of ordinary sanity, or you're outside the bounds of a reasonable description of the workings of the human intellect. And from their view, they're correct. I didn't mean to throw you, I was jumping a little ahead of myself. If they went, I know what you're about to say. If you're making this sound like an attack, that people say, yes, there's a difference between me and what I think. That when I believe that I have thoughts, and I have my mind, and then my mind has thoughts. The psychologists, I'm playing their part. If they went, why do you keep bringing that up? Are you about to, and somebody go, not true? Because if you are, hey, you're beginning to have some kind of butterfinger brain. No. Now we'll forget ordinary people. I just want you to understand that is not, I'm not diagnosing some flaw in the human intellect. That's the way it's supposed to work. That's the way people are supposed to believe it works. But now you tell me, since I assume that none of you will admit to being a dunderhead, you tell me, under ordinary conditions, where is the distinction between the screen and what it thinks? Where is the distinction? Even though ordinary people say, well, I think about something. I'm thinking about a problem. I'm thinking about the way my ex-partner cheated me, or I'm thinking about the way somebody socially mistreated me. Or I'm thinking about a problem. I'm thinking about how to pay off this debt before I lose my business. I'm thinking about something. I am thinking on the problem. You have got to be a world-class corn brain not to realize that under all ordinary conditions, there is no distinction between, quote, what you're thinking, the thinking process, and the apparent immediate object. It's not open to debate. All you got to do, if you want to look at it another way, is just remember, of course, here's the real tricky part. People go spend their whole life just trying to do what I'm saying by just remember tomorrow, later tonight, when you're sitting around just driving home and you're just thinking ordinary daydreams. So everybody missed it. I said, just remember this. There are people that spend 50 years just to be able to do that. But all right. Just suddenly, while you're driving along, and remember what I just said, and try and separate your mind from where it was you was thinking. Whatever it was, you're driving along and a car goes by, it reminds you of a girl that you almost picked up last week, or it reminds you of somebody that you used to know, or a cop goes by and you suddenly replay something that happened to you 20 years ago, and you're talking to, you're having flash pictures of a cop stopping you saying, "Can I see your license?" And you say, "Hey, see this, mother." And in the middle of all that, whatever it is, just going on, this fine movie going on that you call your thinking process, it just separate you from it. Just say, all right, he was obviously wrong, so I'll just be aware of the fact I'll separate my mind, which is what's playing this. It's actually your brain. I mean, saying your mind just makes people feel good. They think, well, at least I'm not just a hippo. It's not just I have a brain, I'm a human. Of course, some people have to check their driver's license that says, under race, some states will put H. Just to make, so that help reinforce the citizens' good impression of themselves. But at any rate, you'll think, well, I'm a human. It's your brain. It's just electrical, chemical operations of your brain. But since I'm obviously incorrect in what I'm saying, that people believe that the thinker and the thoughts are separate, and that they should be. Not only that they are, but as I said, that's when I brought up my imaginary psychologist. It's not only that people accept the fact that, that's the way it is. The psychologist, speaking for all of sanity, the name of scientific civilization, say, well, if you're about to insinuate otherwise, you are wrong. No. That's not only the way it should be, that is the sane way. That's the only way. If you're going to say something else, you're nuts. Right. So, there you are driving along, and all you got to do is just remember and check it out. Separate your mind, the thing doing the thinking, from the thought. Just try it. Just try it. It's not going to hurt you. Doesn't cost anything. Just try it. And of course, I thought you weren't going to say of course. Leave me alone. Now you just thought, see, that was my mind. See, I separate them in public. I ask you not to wave our dirty thoughts, laundry in public. And you remember, God said, no, what was it? The man told God, yeah, I admit, you caught me. Do your worst. Okay. There was a tenuous tie-in. Not a be-in and not a tie-dye, a tenuous tie-in. All you've got to do is try and separate. Just no other reason, just say, well, there you are and you're aware of the fact the movie's playing. Or if you're more a stay-at-homer, the TV show's playing. It's going through and it's you driving. That's a good one. You're driving. Your body's operating. You drive home all the time. You make it. You're not even sure where you went. You drive the same way. There's nothing wrong with that. That's the body's intelligence. Of course, the body at least doesn't lie and engage in all this bullshit about, hey. And we've been through that. Hormones, if they could talk, would just do something reasonable like, hey, look at these. Look at that butt. It's neurons. It's the thought process have to go, hey. Well, they keep searching for something, that's comparable to, hey, you ever seen any bazookas like these? Or maybe a guy say, hey, hormones have to go, and then they just in general have to go, well, wait a minute, let me tell you the kind of guy. They have to go into that. You're driving along and trying to remember. This is going on, and just where you are. There's nothing wrong. Don't say, well, wait a minute, how dare me think that? We'll get to that some other time, such as never. But, wait a minute. Don't worry about what you're thinking, just whatever it is. Since if you understood the first part, if you were listening, well, there's nothing to understand. The mind ordinarily believes that there is a specific distinction. It's just assumed. It's just operational truth that there is a difference between the brain and the thought, between the mind and the thought. Why else would you go to school? Why do people give each other advice? Why do you read? Why do you watch the news? Why do you attempt to do anything? We're not even worried about whether it succeeds or not. Why do people even try? Other than the fact that the mind is one thing and that what it thinks is something else. That's no reason people try to do better. That's no reason all forms of self-help. everything, anything that's intellectual. For you just to read the newspaper. If somebody says, why do you read the newspaper? It's silly. You can say, well, I want to keep up with current events. Well, don't you know enough events? Didn't you read enough? How many newspapers you read before? And you think, well, sir, all my life. You think, well, why do you keep doing it? No. And it's silly because you think, well, I want the new information. Because what I know is not the same as new information, which is another way of disguising the operational reality that the people normally believe that the mind is separate from what it thinks. That's the only reason that we believe ordinarily that education, knowledge is something out there that you take in. That I can get new knowledge and I can put it in here, inside the machine of thought, inside my mind. The trick, the dastardly trick, is all you got to do is feel the separation. Separate your mind from whatever it is you're thinking. At any time, it doesn't matter what it is, that you're just going along in a normal state. And I was sort of insinuating daydreaming because I know in the beginning everyone likes to believe that they do not live in that kind of... So it just makes it nicer. I mean, it doesn't cost any more to be reasonable to dunderheads to ordinary people. It's when I do this thing about there you are driving, kind of staring, doo-doo-doo. You know, ordinary people go, oh, you mean sort of daydreaming, and you're just... right now. Call it anything you want to. Call it the bag of potatoes level of consciousness. But all you got to do at any given time is just remember what I've just been describing, and all you got to do is this simply, since it is a fact that the mind is not the same as what it thinks. Then all you got to do is just suddenly stop and separate your mind from what it's thinking. Just be aware of it. Except for an ordinary person tried that and could extend the awareness of what happened over a period of just a few seconds, which they can't. But if they did, they would find a surprising thing. Would they not? How shall we describe it? Oh, I don't know. Give it a shot. Okay. If they could, remember and attempt to do it and think, well, I'll just become aware of the division, that my mind is not what it's thinking, whatever it was. Always remembering now not to fall in the first trap that people ordinarily do is they want to make some sort of qualitative judgment about what it was they're thinking before they get around to it, which saves you from doing anything. It's like, well, wait a minute, I shouldn't be thinking that kind of crap anyway. I shouldn't be mad at the police, or I shouldn't be cursing somebody that went by in a car that's fancier than mine, whatever it was. Wait a minute, I shouldn't do that. See, you're still all right. So that's why I said we're not worried about what you were thinking, just whatever it was. Suddenly, since it's a fact, a known fact, a reasonable fact that the mind is not the same as it's thinking, then just suddenly go, oh, and become aware of, well, yes, it's my mind, and then whatever's on the screen. Not trying to screw with it, not trying to call off the picture, not trying to say, boy, what a rotten movie. You're the one playing it. Give yourself a break for a minute. So, no kind of judgment. Don't do that. Don't begin to play, Sister Neeblehead, whatever their names are. Don't criticize your movies. Blister and Everhart. Tumor and Shingles. That's the place where we bought our car, isn't it? So without any judgment, you're just aware of the fact that, wait, I'll test what he said, since he's obviously so wrong, that since the mind and what it thinks are not the same, here's a chance I'll just be aware of it. I was suggesting that if an ordinary person could stay aware of what was about to happen, they would find it, I said surprising, upsetting, disturbing, explosive. They'd have to go. Because what they'd find is what? Are we all going to answer together? That what they were thinking goes away. Who turned off the damn set? And of course, the ordinary mind, since the birds have got to keep, as soon as it goes, what happened to what I was thinking? Then you start thinking about that. God, what a weird thing. What was I thinking? Did I do it exactly like he said? I know a lot of people laugh at Norwegian dancing. I'm not one of them, but it could be where that came from. Well, you got to remember that their mythology had a kind of harder-nosed edge to it than all this Western Christianity and all this mishy-mashy stuff. You got to remember, them was always hopping, because even their God of goodness knew that he was going to lose. The destruction was going to bring everybody down. All you could do is just and not merge with it, not let it get you down. Oh, you mean physically? Mythology doesn't have anything to do with physical. Well, I'm sorry, I forgot. Unless you're a dunderhead. No, it has to do with up here. They knew that, Odin knew the forces of evil, the forces of destruction. They're going to kill us all. But, that's a known fact. So, what's the only decent thing to do? I believe that, of course, is where the original band, some of you know, Wet Willie, came from. Is that they came around when the Valkyries weren't there in Valhalla to serenade Odin. Wet Willie would show up and sing in response, "Keep on Smiling," which of course they had to leave once Wagner showed up, and he tried to take the whole story and do something that did not have that kind of light-hearted mid-Georgia tinge to it. Is it not interesting physically, to say the very least, that if you become aware of the fact, just momentarily, and make yourself aware of what, back up one more second. Everybody did hear it so that you didn't think it was a trick in advance. The mind believes, the ordinary level of consciousness believes it, don't even think about it, that it and what it thinks are two different things. I mean, an ordinary mind cannot comprehend that being otherwise. I've already made its own arguments about learning something new. How can you improve yourself? How can you learn anything new? How can you change your opinion? How can you change your political alliance? How can you change your feeling towards somebody, for good or ill? It's because your mind and what it thinks are not the same thing. I mean, that's silly. All right, silly. Then become aware of the fact that any given moment, it doesn't matter what you're thinking about, become aware of the fact that, well, all right, I will. That my mind is a screen, back to where I started, and it's like a screen in which the mind brings up pictures, thoughts. I mean, you can look at the TV. We've been through that. You can sit there with your clicker and turn it off, and there's the TV set. You can still see the screen. You see the reflection of the light behind you. There is the screen. Flick it again, and there's pictures coming up. It's not the same thing. The hardware and the software are two different things. The program and the mechanics of play are two different things. Same with this, right? All right. Then just become aware of it. All right? I got a brain. Whatever it is I'm thinking right now could be silly, could be frivolous, could be self-destructive. It doesn't matter. But at least that is not my brain. That's thoughts I'm having. Where the hell I got them? Right. So just become aware of the fact that I got the screen here and I've got what's playing. So what the hell happened? It quits playing. Which is worse than, in a sense, than depriving an ordinary man's mind of oxygen. If his mind was the respiratory system. That it stops and he goes, and then he begins to think, how weird. Where'd the thoughts go? That's simply it. When I said that do that, if you could just remember that going home, that there are people that spend 50 years doing that, then the whole thing of being able to separate the mind from what it's thinking, if my first example was too tenuous and oblique, that is a fair description of what has always been considered the ultimate in a transcendental intellectual experience. I am conscious, I am not on drugs, I am not weird, I am not stoned, I am conscious, and I'm not thinking about anything in particular. Ooh. These descriptions I threw in a couple tonight. One of them, for theatrical purposes, the way I put it was, like a viewer's tip from our insider's guide or whatever, and I said, what I say, what I talk about here is not a criticism of life, it's more like a telling on it. Now, there's a distinction. I was going to get into the distinctions of distinctions if we have a moment. But the first level of distinction I want to point between this kind of stuff, whether it was me doing it and us sitting here now, or whether it was some other time and some other planet, but attempting to do this to realize that the mind is not the same thing as what it's thinking about, that consciousness and the object apparently of consciousness, the subject of it, where its attention is, the foot that the bird's on, that's not the state of consciousness. Well, yes, it is. Well, just separate for a second. Go back to that, remember. Which why ordinary people can't stand it. Which I got to point out, do you understand that ordinary people have, in a sense, these great transcendental mystical experiences, and they have them all the time? It's like having a mini stroke, and you're over it. It's like suddenly just flashing heartburn, and for a second you think, it's a heart attack, and it's gone. It's like for a second, you're almost conscious with no object. That's what staring's about. It serves no purpose with ordinary people. But isn't it sort of funny that it goes on all the time, and then people who want it specifically go off and spend 50 years and give up their whole life and go sit in one position until their knees wither and they weigh 90 pounds and all their teeth and hair's falling out, and the very thing that everybody else has to avoid at all costs. I'm not going to stand around here and not think about anything. God, that's weird. Everybody knows it's weird. But we got people trying, the would-be mystics, and people attempting to do this in a sense. They're going out, spending their whole life trying to do what everybody else knows. Hey, avoid that like, rats with a plague. A difference that I did want to point out, though, in this kind of specific way of being able, or attempting to do such as this, or even my observations, and people before and after me, but the talking about life that we're doing, there's a difference. It is based upon observable, point-blank, physical laws of nature. Whereas every other attempted organized view of man, any systematized view through religion, philosophy, anything, any ordinary view of a person who believes that their mind and what they think are two different things, all of that's based not upon observable fact, is not based upon, of course I was bringing out a cliche trying to get your attention, laws of nature. Good old 10th grade science, 8th grade science. No. That this kind of stuff, this kind of real mysticism is based upon simple observable laws of nature, whereas all other complex, sophisticated, every other scheme and system in the world is based upon personal whims, dreams, desires. Dreams will do it. And the more it is organized, the more you see the head, let us say, of a church, or a head of a political party, or a man who is now world recognized, the recipient of many scientific prizes, considered to be the father of, let's say his name's Renfro, the father of the Renfro economic paradigm, a whole new school of economic theory, right? The more it becomes systematized, and et cetera, the less it is based, if it ever was, well, it had to start with, but the less it is based upon anything resembling natural, observable fact. It is more and more civilized, that is, it is further and further removed from anything that has any tangible reality. Not that there's anything wrong, but that's why you end up, some people, if you find a very place that you think religion or philosophy or any academic area or some systematized operation that says we're in charge of, we're all on a great mystical quest, etc., and we got the facts here, we got a book, we got an outline. And I mean, that's the first thing you want to think. We got to get order, we got to have a plan, got to have a program. Boy, I'm glad I found you guys. Good, here. $20 for the initial program, let's get that, and you go home and study it. You think, now I'm getting somewhere. The more it is based upon something that would seem to be not just appealing, but would seem to be very practical. It's not downright necessary that we got to have some kind of program. We can't have just somebody wandering around and just talking and going blah, 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 and everybody's speculating, what the hell is this? You want somebody to show up. Nice man, perhaps with a little funny hat and dress, and just a vague resemblance perhaps to Mussolini. But anyway, an authority, a certain kind of aggression. For those of you that didn't particularly care for the one, that there was a man speculating, he was wondering to himself, he was observing and studying it was a whole term, the cities of man, but said he began to wonder, the alpha wolves that life has selected to run our civil packs, which is any organization. He began to wonder, does life select them on the basis of their aggressiveness, or their intelligence, or their submissive, obedient stupidity? There was a little trick in there that some of you should put together. It's all. Which is why when there is an alpha wolf, a pope, a rabbi, a political leader, an economic leader, a mayor of a city, anybody running some kind of a mystic, some sage running some kind of little cult, the more it is operational at the ordinary level, the more the leader running the pack is going to be a combination of aggressiveness, a certain kind of intelligence, and a real nice dose of obedient stupidity. Which sounds, does it not, contradictive to the intelligence part and the aggressiveness? No, only the little Elmo. Only the people too dense to see it. Now, because he is submissive to his own fixed attention. He is submissive to life itself. But everybody that would show up there that would vote for the mayor, everybody would join this little cult, everybody would join a church, everybody would join up with some political system. What they like is the fact that the guy will come out. And of course it helps if he's not actually, if he's always got somebody he can refer to, our dead leader. Yeah. With, God, Stalin, Vishnu, somebody. I mean, it's just a big help to have a dead wolf, and you got his picture up there. Yeah. But I'm here speaking for the dead wolf. You understand that? I'm here speaking for the dead wolf. If you don't like it, get the hell out. And people go, ooh, I'm in the right place. And they say, and I've got the book. I've got the book of the secret bow wows and the howls. Right here. And they're systematized. They're in a form that any fool can understand. And you think, that's me. That's me. I'm in the right place. Maybe somebody in the back said, can you repeat fool again? You go, any fool! And they almost have an orgasm. Oh, God, I'm glad I'm here. That is personal whim. That is nothing but dreams. But notice that is what the mind thinks that it wants. Even those that would presume to be would-be transcendental thinkers, people on a great mystical sojourn. It's only natural. You think, well, this is some sort of great mystical, or the possibility of some great mystical trip. Well, what are you going to do if you're an ordinary mind? You're going out and stand in the middle of a Nebraska cornfield. All right, even up close to a road, a dirt road. And you're not even sure anybody's ever going to show up. Sometimes maybe you see little dust clouds and you think, well, maybe is that a pickup truck way over there going to that? What are you going to do? Either that or you'd try to hitch a ride at least and get down to Omaha and go to a bus station. Go to a place that has a sign, bus station. And if that's, too complex for you, maybe they've got a motto under there, we're in charge of taking people places. And you go, that's it. Where's you going to go? And so the mind, even would-be mystics, it thinks the first thing it does is try to find somebody to tell it. We've been through that, and you find nobody can tell you. And so then you're supposed to wander around a few years, the way it normally does. Take a few drugs, have a few adventures. And if you still look, you think, well, what I got to do now, I'm going to have to get serious about this. What I got to do is find a bus station. What I got to do is find a travel bureau. What I got to do, the mind says, what we got to do is get organized. And since it can't, what we got to do is find somebody that is organized. The system and the people are one. That's the way it should be, says someone. Have you forgotten where we started tonight? The mind, ordinary consciousness, the mind is inseparably merged. There is no distinction between what an ordinary mind is and whatever it is it's thinking immediately. And whatever this thing is immediate is of no consequence. Well, stick around, I'll turn the word immediate into a curse. Because that's what fixed attention, that is what limited awareness is immediate thought. But an ordinary mind says, wait a minute, that's what we should be involved with. I mean, what's the alternative? You're going to let your mind just wander off? You should apply your mind to whatever the problem is right now. Oh, yeah, well, that's true. That's true. I'm sorry. Yes. There's where an immediate problem is. And then when that one, and then here, and then there. That is the same thing as being organized. That is the same thing saying, well, I just don't know where to go, so what I need to do is find some organized system, something that has some idea of what they're up to. What I've got to do is find more ordinary minds that are more inseparably in their belief, merged with, in their disbelief, merged with what they believe they're thinking. Does it cost more to get even more vague at the end? It's not vague. What's the whole purpose of having Holy Writ and ideas? To have a system. It's to show that, hey, we're us, and there's the system. Which is to say, all right, now we've got our minds as puny and as undeveloped as they are, but thank God, old Yogi Wolf there, our great founder, he knew what to do. And he put it all right here. Right here. And you go, right there? Right here. Is it available? And it's available later. I could have my own copy. You can have your own copy. It's right here. That is simply an external reflection of the unanalyzed, unexamined, and, might I add to you people, great roadblock of accepting that my mind is whatever it is I'm thinking. That there is no distinction. Well, I mean, if there is a distinction. I mean, if there is no... What did I tell you it was? Jesus. Damn, I forgot.